All right, so we're diving deep today into Real Madrid.
Sounds good.
Yeah, you've sent us a ton of articles and even some YouTube transcripts. It seems like everyone wants to get a sense of what's really going on with the club.
Yeah, I mean, beyond just like, the scores and the standings.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like, what's the vibe? What's the culture? Are they living up to the hype?
Yeah, are they the real deal or are there cracks in the foundation?
Okay, so one thing that jumped out at me right away from these sources is this idea that big clubs, and I mean, Real Madrid is about as big as it gets.
Yeah.
Sometimes they get a little, how should we say, sensitive about referee calls.
Yeah, a little whiny maybe.
Yeah, even when, let's be honest, they've gotten a few favorable calls themselves in the past.
It's interesting, right? Because it speaks to the pressure they're under. They're not just expected to win, they're expected to dominate.
Like it's almost a birthright?
Yeah, and any little thing that goes against them, even if it's just maybe a missed call, feels like a huge injustice.
Like the universe is conspiring against them.
Exactly.
There's a quote from one article that I think sums it up perfectly. It says, "The big clubs shouldn't be complaining about these things, especially the biggest ones."
Oof.
They've been talking for 4 days about whether the penalty against Union Berlin was a penalty or not, and now 4 days later, everything they said has fallen apart.
So are they being held to a different standard?
It seems like it.
Like they should just win gracefully and move on even when things don't go their way.
Yeah, like they're supposed to be above it all.
Above the fray.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit and talk about how they actually play on the pitch.
All right, let's get tactical.
So some of these sources are praising the individual talent they have, like Mbappé, Vinicius Bellingham,
Oh, yeah, they've got some serious star power.
but others are questioning if they're too reliant on these stars and not enough on a solid team strategy.
So it's like the classic debate, right? Individual brilliance versus tactical discipline.
Right. Can they just throw a bunch of superstars together and expect magic to happen?
Well, Real Madrid's history shows they've succeeded with both approaches.
That's true.
Some of their most legendary teams were built on tactical mastery. Others thrived on the unpredictable genius of their star players.
So are they maybe masking some deeper tactical flaws with individual brilliance?
It's a good question, and it's interesting to look at some of their recent matches.
What have you noticed?
Well, the results have been mostly positive for sure, but
Right.
there are definitely whispers of a lack of cohesion, especially in the midfield.
Yeah.
And even some of their wins haven't been very convincing.
So maybe they can't just rely on individual talent alone, especially when they face tougher opponents like in the later stages of the Champions League.
That's what a lot of these sources seem to be suggesting.
Okay, let's zoom in on one player in particular, Vinicius Jr.
Ah, Vini.
He's incredible, right? So much talent. But several sources pointed out that his individualistic playing style can be a bit of a double-edged sword.
Yeah, his reliance on confidence and mood can make him a little unpredictable.
Some even suggest that he's susceptible to pressure.
He thrives on emotion, you know?
Yeah, he's got that fire.
That instinct to take on defenders and create something out of nothing.
But if his confidence dips or the pressure gets too high, it could affect his performance.
It's definitely a factor.
And then you've got Mbappé coming in who's being praised for his humility and how smoothly he's integrated into the team.
Yeah, talk about contrasting styles.
Right, so can a team thrive with both of these approaches?
It's a question of balance.
Mm.
Can you embrace both fiery individualism and disciplined teamwork?
Can a coach harness those individual talents without stifling their creativity?
Because, let's be real, both styles can win games.
Absolutely. All right, let's talk coaches now.
The men behind the curtain.
There's been quite a carousel at Real Madrid over the years, from tactical masters like Mourinho
Oh yeah, the special one.
to those who give players more freedom. It seems like they've tried it all.
And that's the interesting thing. There's no single blueprint for success at Real Madrid.
So what does that tell us?
Well, they've won trophies with rigid tactical systems and with more free-flowing approaches.
Hmm.
And now you've got a former player like Xabi Alonso who's being praised for using his experience as a world-class midfielder to inform his coaching style.
So it's not just about finding the right coach. It's about finding the right coach for the right team at the right time.
Exactly. And Real Madrid seems to have a knack for attracting top managerial talent.
Whether it's seasoned veterans like Ancelotti or up-and-coming stars like Alonso.
The real test, though, is how they manage these big personalities, these superstars, and mold them into a winning unit.
Because the egos on that team must be massive.
Oh, yeah. That's a whole other deep dive right there.
Let's move on to something a little less touchy-feely, the financial side of things.
All right, let's talk money.
One source highlighted Real Madrid's record-breaking revenue over €1 billion.
Wow, that's a lot of jerseys.
And a lot of that's tied to their newly renovated Santiago Bernabeu Stadium, right?
Yeah, they've turned it into a multi-purpose venue, hosting concerts and other events, generating revenue streams beyond just football.
Smart.
Very smart.
But there's also a shadow hanging over this financial dominance.
Oh.
Some sources are accusing La Liga of unfair practices, like biased scheduling or discrepancies in team budgets.
Creating an uneven playing field.
Yeah, and they even point fingers at Barcelona, suggesting a lack of fair play.
So it raises a crucial question about competitive balance. Can a league thrive when one team has such a significant financial advantage?
And it ties back to our earlier discussion about those unconvincing wins.
Right. If Real Madrid is already cruising through La Liga, even when they're not playing their best, are they really being tested?
Are they even motivated to push themselves?
Exactly. It makes you wonder if this lack of competition could actually hurt them in the long run, especially when they face those high-pressure Champions League matches against teams that are equally talented and maybe even hungrier.
So we've got this team loaded with talent, managed by a proven winner and backed by incredible financial resources.
Sounds like a recipe for success.
But we've also identified some potential weaknesses.
Okay, like what?
This over-reliance on individual brilliance, the lack of intensity at times, and this question of whether they're being truly challenged week in and week out.
Yeah, and let's not forget the psychological aspect.
Oh, right.
The pressure on Real Madrid is immense. Every match is scrutinized, every decision dissected.
And even the perception of unfairness can create a storm of controversy.
Absolutely.
Sure.
So are these early warning signs, these little cracks in the foundation, something they can address before they become bigger problems?
Or are we witnessing the beginning of a potential decline?
It's hard to say for sure. Real Madrid has a history of overcoming adversity, of bouncing back from setbacks, but they can't afford to be complacent.
They need to find a way to harness that individual talent while also developing a more cohesive team identity.
And they need to be prepared for the inevitable challenges, both on and off the pitch.
Because as we've seen from these sources, the world of Real Madrid is never dull.
It's a roller coaster of emotions, of triumphs and controversies, of financial power and intense scrutiny.
And it's a world that demands constant adaptation, constant evolution. Because in the world of elite football, standing still is the same as falling behind.
You snooze, you lose.
So what does this all mean for our listener who's diving deep into Real Madrid? What are the key takeaways from this exploration of their successes, their challenges, and their future?
I think the key takeaway is that Real Madrid is at a crossroads. They have all the ingredients for continued success, the talent, the resources, the winning tradition.
But they also face some significant questions about their tactical approach, their mental resilience, and their ability to navigate the increasingly complex landscape of modern football. It sounds like the stakes are pretty high.
Yeah, they could solidify their dynasty and continue their reign as one of the world's most dominant clubs, or they could fall victim to complacency or internal strife and allow their rivals to close the gap.
And we've seen this happen to other legendary teams, haven't we? Where that hunger fades or they fail to adapt to a changing game, and suddenly they're not the giants they once were.
Absolutely, and that's why it's so crucial for Real Madrid to keep evolving. It's not enough to rely on past glories or individual talent alone. They need to be proactive to address those weaknesses we discussed and constantly strive to improve.
So for our listener who's been soaking all this in, what would you say is the single most important thing for them to watch for as this season unfolds?
I think it comes down to team cohesion. Can Ancelotti create a system where those brilliant individuals like Vinicius and Mbappé work together seamlessly and consistently, or will they continue to rely on moments of individual brilliance to bail them out? That's what I'll be watching closely.
Because if they can find that balance,
Yeah.
if they can truly gel as a team,
Then they become incredibly dangerous.
Yeah.
We're talking about a team that could potentially dominate both domestically and in Europe for years to come, a team that could etch its name alongside the true legends of the sport.
that's a tantalizing prospect, but it's also a reminder that nothing is guaranteed, even for a club like Real Madrid.
Exactly. And that's what makes it so exciting to follow. We get to witness this unfolding drama, this battle against complacency, against the weight of history, against those hungry rivals, eager to knock them off their perch.
This deep dive has been a fantastic journey. We've gone way beyond the headlines, haven't we? We've explored the nuances, the complexities, the factors that make Real Madrid such a fascinating case study in the world of modern football.
It's been a pleasure sharing these insights and analysis with you, and I hope our listener has found it valuable, maybe even sparking some new perspectives on this iconic club.
Hello, if you are listening to this, you may not be subscribed to the channel. Activate the bell so that you will be notified when there is a new story and share it with the people you want.
I thank you from the bottom of my heart. It's fascinating how they can have so much success with different coaching styles.
It really speaks to the adaptability of the players and the club as a whole.
Like they're able to adjust to whoever's at the helm.
Exactly, and make it work. Okay, let's shift gears for a second and talk about the financial side of things. One source highlighted Real Madrid's record-breaking revenue over €1 billion.
It's mind-boggling.
Much of that's tied to their newly renovated Santiago Bernabéu stadium, right?
Yeah, they've really capitalized on that, haven't they?
Turning it into this multi-purpose venue, concerts, other events.
Generating revenue streams beyond just football.
It's a smart business move.
Very savvy.
But there's also this shadow hanging over this financial dominance. Some sources are accusing La Liga of unfair practices.
Like what kind of practices?
Well, things like biased scheduling or discrepancies in team budgets.
So it's not a level playing field.
That's what some are suggesting.
And how does that impact the league as a whole?
Well, it raises questions about competitive balance. Can a league thrive when one team has such a significant financial advantage?
Right. Does it make it harder for other clubs to compete even if they have talented players?
And they even point fingers at Barcelona, suggesting a lack of fair play.
It's always interesting when those two clubs are mentioned in the same breath.
Right. There's so much history and rivalry there.
Yeah, and it adds another layer to this whole discussion about fairness and competitive balance.
And it makes you wonder if this lack of competition could actually hurt Real Madrid in the long run.
How so?
Well, if they're not really being pushed, are they reaching their full potential? Are they getting complacent?
That's a valid point. They need to be challenged in order to grow.
Right. And when they face those top teams in the Champions League, will they be ready?
It's something to keep an eye on for sure.
So we've got this team with incredible talent, a proven coach, and massive financial resources.
Sounds like a recipe for success.
But we've also identified some potential weaknesses.
Okay, remind me what those were.
Well, there's the over-reliance on individual brilliance,
Yeah.
the lack of intensity at times, and the question of whether they're being truly challenged week in and week out.
Yeah, and we can't forget the psychological aspect.
Right, the pressure, the scrutiny.
The weight of expectations on their shoulders.
It's exactly. Are these early warning signs, little cracks in the foundation that could become bigger problems?
Or are they just bumps in the road that they'll overcome?
I guess only time will tell.
Time and those high-stakes matches where the pressure is really on.
All right, so as we wrap up this deep dive into Real Madrid, what are the key takeaways for our listeners?
Well, I think the biggest takeaway is that Real Madrid is at a crossroads.
The crossroads. How so?
They have everything they need for continued success, but they also face some serious questions.
About their tactical approach, their mental toughness, their ability to navigate this complex world of modern football.
Exactly. They could go on to become even more dominant, or they could stumble and fall behind.
It's a pivotal moment for them.
And that's what makes it so exciting to follow them.
Because we don't know what's going to happen next.
Exactly. And that's the beauty of sports, right? The unpredictability, the drama.
Absolutely well said. So where do we go from here? What should our listener be watching for as the season progresses?
I think the key thing to watch is team cohesion.
How well those star players work together.
Exactly. Can they find a balance between individual brilliance and collective strength?
Because if they can.
If they can then watch out, Real Madrid could be unstoppable.
It's like they're walking a tightrope right now between continued dominance and potential decline.
And that's what makes it so fascinating to watch them. You can't take your eyes off them because you don't know which way they're going to fall.
Yeah, they could really cement their legacy as one of the greatest clubs of all time, or
they could become another cautionary tale, a team that couldn't maintain its grip on the top.
We've seen it happen before, right? These legendary teams that just sort of fade away.
Yeah. They get complacent or they fail to adapt, and the next thing you know, they're struggling to keep up.
And it seems like Real Madrid is aware of this danger. They're trying to evolve. They're trying to stay ahead of the curve.
Yeah, they're making smart moves in the transfer market. They're investing in their facilities. They're bringing in talented coaches.
But it's not just about the external factors, is it?
No, it's also about the internal dynamics, the team chemistry, the mentality.
Right. Can they maintain that hunger, that drive to win, even when they're already at the top?
That's the million-dollar question, and it's something that only time will tell.
So for our listener who's been following along with us, what should they be paying attention to as the season unfolds?
I think the key thing to watch is how well those star players gel. as a team? Can they put their egos aside and work together for the common good?
Because if they can,
If they can, then Real Madrid will be a force to be reckoned with. They'll be virtually unstoppable.
but if they can't, if those internal divisions start to show,
Then they could be in trouble because their rivals will be waiting to pounce. They'll be ready to exploit any weakness.
so it all comes down to teamwork in the end.
It always does in football. You can have all the individual talent in the world, but if you can't work together as a unit, you're not going to win consistently.
Well, I think we've given our listener a lot to think about today.
Yeah, we've really gone deep, haven't we?
We've explored the history, the finances, the tactics, the personalities, the drama.
All the ingredients that make Real Madrid such a captivating club.
And at the end of the day, that's what it's all about, right? The story, the passion, the unpredictable nature of the game.
Absolutely. And Real Madrid's story's far from over.
It's just getting started, and we can't wait to see what happens next.
Me neither.
Well, that's going to do it for this deep dive into Real Madrid. Thanks for joining us.
It's been a pleasure.
Hello. If you are listening to this, you may not be subscribed to the channel. Activate the bell so that you will be notified when there is a news story, and share it with the people you want. I thank you from the bottom of my heart.